In this video, I'm going to be talking about music and the trees of the forest that sing. Something was just brought to my knowledge about this. Information I knew for years, and now it has presented itself in a whole new way that I was connecting it to the Bible in the Psalms, where it says that the trees sing and they clap their hands. As you know, I previously did a video telling the story of the DW drum workshop and the almond tree drums that they created. But for their 45th anniversary drums, they went to the Italian Alps to a special forest where Stradivari obtained the spruce wood that was special resonant wood for the violins that came from Italy. The Italian violin maker, Stradivari, in Latin is known as Stradivarius. He lived in Cremona, Italy, and this is the place where he would manufacture and hand make the violins with inlay that were so beautiful. These violins had been made for 300 years, and there was a special magical forest where he would go in the Italian Alps to obtain the wood for the violins. Now, just recently, John Good, the one who I talked about that made the almond tree drums at the DW, or the drum workshop manufacturing plant, they put forth a 45th year anniversary drum, and John went to this special forest, and it's very neat because they show the spruce trees and there's a violin shape showing that it is the violin forest. People go from all over the world to this special forest for this special wood, and I really had a connection to this when John was telling the story about how when you walk out into this forest that all the trees reverberate a sound, and the crunching sound of your feet can be heard echoing through the trees like they reverberate, and it's known as the singing forest because the trees really do sing. I really did not understand that concept of what that meant, because in the Psalms, King David, the instrument maker, wrote that the trees sing and they clap their hands. So when he was out in the woods, he took a hammer, which he really didn't have a hammer with him. He used a tire iron. But they went and tapped on the trees. So what happened was, he said that the tree really came alive, and the hammer echoed up the tree like the tree was singing and reverberating. And he said not only that tree that he hit, but everything around it echoed this, like the forest was singing. And this just really revealed something about King David, the instrument maker, and how he wrote that the trees sing and clap their hands in his Psalms, which he played on musical instruments. And what they do in this forest in the Italian Alps is that they harvest the spruce that's in this forest, and some of the spruce is only good for making furniture, but other trees are known as resonant trees because they actually do sing, and they all have a tone. So by taking the hammer and tapping on the trees, you would get the tone, and they can tell from tapping on the tree which trees would make a good piano, to build which ones would make a good cello, a bass, a violin, or a viola. And they choose these different trees and then saw them down, and they saw them into these little planks of wood that each have a tone, and they can actually lift up the piece of wood and hit it with a mallet, and it has a tone. And interestingly, at the drum factory, one of the places where they finalize a drum kit is they take it over to a tuning device like you do with a guitar, and they take the drum shell and they tap on it with a mallet, and the tone is resonated into the tuning device and tells you exactly what note that drum is playing, whether it's an F or an A or a G or a B. And I just find it very fascinating that the instrument maker, the sweet singer of Israel, the instrument maker, he actually wrote about the trees singing and clapping their hands. And now this is being revealed for, I think, our day, that there was another connection that I made that I just was blown away. And so I wanted to come out here where these gorgeous old pines are, where I live. I'm not in the Italian Alps, but just showing you tapping on regular spruce trees and just giving you a little example of what they do.
He selects wood that's just right for making musical instruments. When you look around a forest like this, you can say, that's a violin, that's a cello, this is a piano soundboard?
Yes, for example, this is perfect for the violin.
Its trunk is long and straight and has few branches or knots.
Vedi che come bello,
This spruce is ripe for becoming an instrument, says Marcello Mazzucchi, the former director of the local Forest Service. It's no accident that we're in the same corner of the Alps where famed Renaissance luthiers Stradivari, Guarneri, and Amati hand-picked the trees that would become some of the world's finest instruments. Thanks to a serendipitous combination of the altitude and climate, these have come to be called Il Bosco che Suona, the musical woods.
Is cut into wedges and aged for at least 6 years, like a fine wine. There's enough aging in Cerese's workshop to make violin tops for 1,000 orchestras.
The wood that I choose has to have the physical qualities, but it also has to have a kind of energy, and already it has a voice.
You don't
And-
think of wood as having energy or a voice.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. So the body, it's special wood that vibrates, that resonates.
Now, when you take this tom-tom, this is one that I made. I did the finish on it. I bought these lugs and rims. But this is what they do to test the drum shells at the drum factory. And because this has the drum heads on it, I'm not going to get the same effect. But right after they create the shell and put it in the round mold, they take it to the room where they put the tuner on it and they tap on it. Bum, 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 bum. And it gives them a specific note that the wood rings. And then you can tune the heads to the note. So you tune the top head and the bottom head, and you turn the screws on these lugs here. And anyway, this is one of my drums that I made and quite some time ago at my mom's house. The shells were already glued, but I did the finish completely from bare wood. So I just wanted to show you how they find the pitch of the drum. And Cremona, Italy is still the heart of handmade violin making, and in the tradition of Antonio Stradivari, and trying to make Stradivarius violins in our day. They don't use any trees that are younger than 150 years old. But what I just learned after seeing them doing this in the forest and toning the trees and choosing the trees for either violins or cellos, or as in the DW 45th anniversary drums, they chose wood from that forest. In 2018, they had a very bizarre, strong storm that came through the Italian Alps in that special musical forest that flattened over 1 million trees. It literally decimated the forest where these singing trees are, and they were all toppled to the ground. So then they were hanging from power lines. The trees were extremely tall, and they were just laid flat. So the forestry people that take care of this special forest, they came in and they were trying to salvage the resonant trees that they could use for instrument making, and they had to get the wood and process it quickly, because if a fungus got on the tree, it would be no good. You know, if insects bored into it, it would be no good. And some of the trees that they still have in those woods today were there 300 years ago when Stradivari went to the forest to get lumber for the first violins that he was making. The year that all the old trees were flattened in that forest that were really significant trees happens to be the same year that my mother passed away, 2018. I thought that was very significant, and I just want to tell you some of the story and some of the information about that forest and what is going on there. Now they're wondering about their so-called climate change, if that's going to affect these trees. But apparently forests have been decimated worldwide, and probably a sign of the birth pangs of the Messiah. There's things that connect this story to the Messiah. So I started realizing that King David, the musical instrument maker of the Holy Temple, actually wrote about the special resonant trees because he used special wood to build the instruments. And he must have known about this forest, plus wherever he got his wood to make the musical instruments, whether it was in the cedar forest in Lebanon that was called the Forest of the King or the Forest of God. It's really very interesting. So let me read to you the psalm that suddenly made sense to me when I realized that these trees really do sing. When you tap on them, they reverberate, they have a tone, and then you make instruments out of them and they really sing. Now keep in mind that this is being presented right now when we're in the end of days, and this is being revealed right now more than ever. And I want to read 1 Chronicles 16:33 first. It says, I'm reading the JPS Tanakh 1917 version. Then shall the trees of the wood sing for joy before the Lord, for he is come to judge the earth. Is that about to happen? Is that why this is going to be presented right now? That the trees actually do sing, and they sing in that forest where Stradivari got the wood to make all of the musical instruments, including grand pianos. And to this day, people from all over the world come there and pick out the tree they want to build their instrument so that they can musically sing. Now let's look at Psalm 96:12 from the Tanakh 1917. Let the field exult, and all that is therein. Then shall all the trees of the wood sing for joy. The trees are singing. And that forest of Stradivari is the singing forest. It's an enchanted, magical forest. And every time your feet walk on the earth around that forest, everything reverberates with its sound of singing. Now, it says in Isaiah 55:12, For ye shall go out with joy, and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing. These are the Alps of Italy, the hills of this special resonant forest of these resonant trees. So let me read it again without interrupting myself. For ye shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Isaiah 14:8 says, The evergreens also rejoice over your demise, as do the cedars of Lebanon, singing, Since you fell asleep, no woodsman comes up to chop us down. The trees are singing. No one came to chop them down. They're still in the forest. and they're still singing and clapping their hands before God. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those words that are used in those Psalms and in Isaiah in a moment, but I would like to read an article about the forest from DW, and this article was February 27th of 2019, and it's saying, "Can Stradivarius violins weather climate change in Italy?" This is by Angelo Van Schaik. The forest where the wood for Stradivarius violins come from has been used for 300 years to build some of the best stringed instruments in the world. Climate change might change that. Now violin makers seek solutions. The forest where the wood for Stradivarius violins comes from has been used for 300 years. Back in the 17th century, Antonio Stradivari traveled for 2 days from his hometown Cremona to the Manna-Fest forest in northern Italy to locate the perfect wood for his instruments, which would become world famous. Prized for their superior sound quality, an original Stradivarius can sell for millions of dollars. In more than 300 years after the death of the world's most famous luthier, someone who builds or repairs stringed instruments with a neck and a sound box, trees from this vast spruce woodland are still used to make violins, cellos, upright basses, and pianos, and now drums at the DW Drum Workshop. But the famous singing wood is feeling the effects of climate change in the form of more extreme weather, says local forester Paolo Kovacs, as he maneuvers his four-wheel drive around a narrow mountain path in the idyllic Fiemme Valley. Last October, unusually violent storms ripped up more than 14 million trees across the Dolomite mountain range where the Manna-Fest forest is located. "Those are almost all abete rosso," said Kovacs, referring in their Italian name to the acres of broken European spruces cascading down the mountainsides. They have relatively short roots, so they fall over more easily. Only one 25-meter, 82 feet spruce survived the storm in this particular area. One tree. "This one is around 150 years old," said Kovacs, pointing to it. "It's a bit of a miracle it's still there. Maybe it was covered by other trees, or it has unusually long roots." More than 155 miles away, in a workshop in the small city of Cremona, where Stradivari lived and worked, master luthier Stefano Cogna passes his thumbnail over the rings of a piece of wood. The rings are remarkably close, all about a half a centimeter apart, and almost identical. "Listen," he said. "This is how it should be. This is going to be a great violin." The 73-year-old should know. He's been making violins for 45 years and says this kind of uniformity is what makes the European spruce so suitable for building instruments. That said, not every felled spruce makes the cut. For every tree that is eventually used, 20 to 30 others are deemed unworthy. Cogna is one of the 156 luthiers working in what has become the capital of high-quality handmade instruments. Its long history of the craft and its proximity to the woods draw people from all over the world eager to learn the art of violin making. Cogna himself is from Hungary. Giorgio Chrysalis, another luthier with his own workshop, moved here from Medellin, Colombia in the 1970s to follow in Stradivari's footsteps. And in one corner of Chrysalis' workshop, a young man from Japan's shaping a long piece of wood into the neck of a cello. So it's a little bit mind-blowing that 14 million trees were felled through the strong winds. I read that the winds topped from 110 miles an hour hurricane force to 125 miles an hour. That technically is a hurricane. While some fear that this centuries-old tradition is at risk in light of changing climate, Sandro Asaneri, the vice president of Cremona's Guild of Violin Makers, isn't concerned, at least not about the damage caused by the October 2018 storm. The woods are enormous, he says. I know lots of trees have been damaged, but I also know the local foresters are working hard to save the trees that snapped. The guild has contracted a local woodworking company to collect fallen trees and saw them into pieces so they can be used to make instruments. Besides that, they are planting new trees at the moment. I'm very optimistic, said Asanari. Still, Forester Kovacs says planting trees won't help instrument makers in the short term. A spruce has to be at least 150 years old before it can become a violin. To become a cello or an upright bass, the tree has to be even older. And you know, like I said, they walked past trees in that forest that were there when Stradivari went there to get his violin wood. So those trees are still standing from 300 years ago. On top of this, Kovacs is concerned about the changing weather patterns he attributes to climate change. The October storm that hit the Dolomites was extraordinary. This one came from the southeast, from the Adriatic Sea, he said, explaining that the wind usually comes from the northeast of the Alps. The weather system resembled the way hurricanes develop off the southeastern coasts of the United States. It was warmer than usual, it was stronger than usual, and it brought more rain than usual. Last year was the hottest in Italy since records began in 1800 and was 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the 1961 to 1990 average. The average temperature in the country has risen more than elsewhere in Europe, although it's not clear why Italy is warming more. The effects are being felt across the country, not just in the Singing Woods. Around the same time, the storms hit the northern province of Trento, Sicily, way down south, experienced heavy rain and floods that killed 10 people. I think we have to get used to it, said Kovacs. The overall temperature of the atmosphere is rising, so the weather becomes more extreme. That's what we've seen here. Despite Asaneri's apparent lack of worry, he said the Guild is making plans to ensure the future of their craft in the face of climate change. We're buying up pieces of the woods to control them better in the future, he said, of the state-owned Panavegio forest. We are confident our tradition will last another 400 years. Now, it's interesting to look at some of the words in the Psalms where it's talking about the trees singing and that they clap their hands. In NAS Exhaustive Concordance number 4222 is maka, and it means to strike or clap. And of course, when you play the drums, you're actually striking them with drumsticks or mallets or brushes, and it's very interesting that they're striking the tree with a hammer to gauge the tone and the resonance of each individual tree for the instrument building from the Italian Alps in the Stradivari forest. Now, that was the NAS definition, but if you go to the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, that same number, maka, is a primitive root to rub or strike the hands together in exultation, clap. So it's interesting that you, like when you play some of the hand drums and stuff, you're using your hands to strike it with. You rub your hands on certain drums, like you can get certain sounds with the conga drums by you know, the way you drag your hands across the head. And I just find that very interesting, where it talks about the trees clapping their hands. You have in the NAS Exhaustive Concordance number 3709, calf, and it's from kapha, and it means by definition hollow or flat of the hand, palm, sole of the foot. So that's very interesting. You know, conga drums are hollow, drums are hollowed. So when you hit them with the flat of your hand, you're making music. But an interesting definition of that word, it's referring to hands, that the trees clap their hands, it actually says down below, branches. So the branches also are praising God. And of course we know the Messiah is referred to as the branch. The word for trees is number 6086 in Strong's Concordance, which is etz. Tree, trees, or wood. And it means carpenters, framework, gallows, handle, logs, shaft, stalks, stick, sticks, timber, timbers, tree, trees, wild wood, and wooden. Now when King David wrote in the Psalms that the trees are singing for joy, that is Strong's Exhaustive Concordance number 7440, Rinna. It's kind of like Lisa Rinna, the actress, except an H on the end of the name. And that word means cry, gladness, joy, proclamation, rejoicing, shouting, singing, triumph. And it says it's from Rannan properly, a creaking or shrill sound, shout of joy or grief, cry of gladness, joy, proclamation, rejoicing, shouting, singing, and triumph again. And that Rannan word is the Hebrew, which means all of those things. So when King David said that the trees were singing and clapping their hands, then he's processing the wood to make musical instruments out of the resonant wood. It's just like what Stradivari did from the musical forest, the violin forest. And there's just some stunning connections that the Lord just revealed to me about this that I'm going to be probably talking about in another video next. So I hope to do more on this subject. There's something incredible that God just revealed, and I find that interesting because the last video I did, I said the last thing that was the secret to be revealed was the music of the temple and probably secrets of the temple instruments. And I believe this is being revealed right now for some stunning purpose. So I hope that you'll stay tuned and listen to this, but let me carry on with what I'm talking about here. So let me say right here that I do believe that King David knew the secrets of the resonant trees, and that was part of the instrument making, was to obtain that special wood from the magical forest. Whether he got his wood in Italy or not, I have no idea. But definitely in the surrounding area. He harvested wood from the forest of God in Lebanon, from the cedars of Lebanon. And I talk about King David and his harp making in my book, The Almond Tree, Aaron's Rod, the Messiah, King of Israel, and shared some things that I researched on that. And I just really believe that he knew when he wrote the Psalms. Some of these things about the trees are really connecting. This forest in this way connects to the Messiah. And I'm going to show you how, probably in the next video. That and the almond wood drums that DW made that I told you about. I really believe this is a divine revelation for the end of days. what I'm going to tell you in the next video, if I do another video, that is. It's interesting that in 1966, in that same area, they had these terrible floods that also did great damage to that forest. And with this, I'm going to end this video, and you'll have to watch the next part on the next video. So, I hope you enjoyed this. I really enjoy this subject, and I enjoy talking about it. I had to go to another location because lawnmowers came out and started making a loud racket. All these little birds just landed in the tree above me. Little tiny, tiny birds. I'll see if I can photograph them. Hi, little birds. That the trees actually do sing, and King David knew it. Shalom. Thanks for blessing me, and thanks for following my channel.